All right. This is Larry Hoy, biker writer legend, and you made it back to the First Chapter podcast, where I introduce you to some of my favorite books and I give you the first chapter for free. So, let's see what's on the agenda for today, will ya? Hey, everybody. Got a special one for you today. Today, I'm bringing you Outbound by Mcintosh. Bumped into Megan out at ShadowCon this time, and great person. Can't wait to get started. So this is Outbound by Mcintosh. All right, let's go see what's on the backside, shall we? Victor is waiting at Mars Central Station to descend to the surface. All he needs to do is drop off some onboard brain chips cut from the victims of his latest case and take them to the next low Mars orbit train home. But then a mysterious woman in red arrives. Victor just can't resist. When the woman in red proceeds to bomb the station, Victor becomes not just a witness, but a suspect on the list of potential conspirators. Now Victor has to clear his name and get his professional pride back before he winds up in the mushroom farm. The solar system's a dangerous place full of dark forces waiting for and to stand against the orbital mining company that owns everything. Victor has two weapons at his disposal: unrelenting sarcasm and a really sharp hat. All right, let's see what we find on the first chapter. All right, here we go. Chapter 1. Kimmy watched the Tsebi locust through her spacesuit visor. The asteroid mining machine loomed over her, giant pincers frozen in a raised strike that could slice a man in two. It's like a 7-foot-tall praying mantis. "Why don't you get out from in front of that thing? You're making me nervous." Astro groused as he reached inside the locust's torso with his good hand. He grunted as he grabbed hold of something and jostled it back and forth. Astro's good hand was a Nord Synthetics upgrade with 17 functions, specialized for the asteroid miner on the go. Norcon Synthetics upgrades were top-shelf models, very expensive, and he used it constantly. "Well, I don't think anybody was with those kids when they fell in," Kimmy replied as she backed up. She didn't intend to become locust food. Kimmy's eyes rolled over the Tsebi locust as her onboard software ran a series of numbers and checks that scrolled down the right side of her vision. 37 eager would-be viewers of the repairs sat in her onboard streaming queue, but since the deaths, Tsebi repair had been deemed sensitive. The onboard bots had started auto-censoring it. "No problem with the gravity differential software or the propulsion systems," Kimmy reported. Astro grunted again. His reflection on his suit visor blocked Kimmy's view of his face, but he sounded annoyed. "There's some kind of oil slick in here, but I don't know what could have leaked it." He pulled his hand out. It was covered in shiny brown slime. Asteroid miner was a job both nasty and sterile. A small team of microbiologists and botanists worked around the clock to ensure the asteroid miners' microbotany didn't get out of whack from the lack of microbes out here. Mining dust gumped up the machinery and lungs alike, causing a fast-track bronchitis that would kill a person before they ever got back to Ares Central Hospital on Mars. And the maintenance was never ending. Mining ops were trained to live a life of prevention, preventative maintenance, preventative medicine, preventative intervention, preventative microbiology, but degradation in space was so fast with all the invisible rays and microasteroids lambasting them every hour, there was just no way to keep up, especially not with the nearest supply station 1.6 million kilometers further into the belt. Supplies, that was the hardest bottleneck out there. Only human intervention and a sheer rejection of the notion to fail kept places like Orbital Mining Colony Number 3 operational. The company reps would swoop in every few months, promise better supply chains, sigh at the miners' inability to make their own ends meet, and then swoop back out, leaving in their wake a ton of booze and party favors to keep the miners placated. A couple of scantily clad girls streamed by on Kimmy's feed, bumping and grinding in a doorway. They'd cut up some old janitorial fatigues into booty shorts and teeny shirts. Back on Mars, some semblance of gravity would have kept the shirts down over their breasts. But... What? Kimmy blinked past the booty grind girls and looked back at Orto. The avatars didn't work in their maintenance gear, so all she saw was her 36-year-old co-worker in heavy synth-ed coveralls. I said, can you access the main directory and see if it'll turn on? Wake up, Wiesman. Be in the room for a minute, Astro grumbled. Yeah, okay, Kimmy muttered back. You get distracted sometimes too, old man. I know, Astro replied in a gentler voice as Kimmy pulled up the main controls for the robot. She backed away into a corner of the mine shaft as far away as she could get from the locust. After all, at 16, she was only 18 months older than the last girl that got chewed up. The digger's view dominated her vision as it booted up. Well, it's on, she reported, staring back at herself through the Tsabi's camera. Yeah, looks good, Otro replied, now just a cartoon emoji of himself in her peripheral vision. His avatar's long black hair and grisly facial hair made him look like he could be the dad of a lead singer from Martian Revolt. Kimmy raised her arms and pulled her fists inward. The locust responded by straightening its spine. The mining robot stood at its full height, and then, this was the scary part, she had the digger swing a blade, right and then left. The digger slowly powered up into idle mode, swinging the blades as part of its maintenance check protocol. Can we call it? Kimmy asked, trembling in spite of herself. Yeah, let's get out of here, Astro's avatar answered. Suddenly, the bot's view zoomed across the field, and Kimmy was tucked into the corner again in her own body. Real Oturo gave her a thumbs up, his stat halo showing a green 96% for approval, a smiley face for his mood, as well as his current levels for aggression, intimidation, strength, fatigue, and BAL. Kimmy bounced toward him. One time, she'd left the arousal statistic displayed on her stats bar. It made arriving at work awkward. She learned a lot that day about her coworkers that she couldn't unlearn. Let's get back to the station and turn this guy to auto. The mining station was a small rectangular ship on the edge of the current collection field. Kimmy and Oturo shared their bunk space with spare parts, equipment, and little else. Miners did field work in 2-week shifts. Kimmy and Oturo were halfway through their run. Oturo settled into his side of the bunker and checked on the auto baffler before desuiting. He always checked the auto buffers. Old guy didn't trust that bubble of air in outer space that could actually be that stable. How much do you think we made on this trip so far? Kimmy asked as she scanned her stream. Her onboard stream was a brightly lit world peppered with ads tailored to Kimmy's taste, or at least her prior purchases and browsings of the onboard bazaar. Pink and purple neon halls bordered vast corridor of animal mods, hair dyes, and no-cook food, all waiting for her to buy. I don't know. We'll definitely break even at this week on dollars, and I'm working through the holidays should rack us some points too, Oturo answered as he cracked into a beer. Kimmy checked over her shoulder to make sure he was busy watching his own stream. Artie reclined into his gravity net, continually sipping cheap beer. He left unmodified hand behind his head. Astoro yawned. Will you watch the locust for a while, buddy? Sure. Kimmy surveyed the Sabi field in her stream. They were munching along happily, showing pretty good percentages of the hot ores that would bring bank. Stuff like zinc, copper, gold, and platinum. Kimmy leaned over her own chair so Oturo couldn't see as she thumbed a subtle lump on the flesh of her left forearm. Asoro thought she didn't have any upgrades except the mandatory ZAT gene, nets neurophonic implants across each orbital to accentuate the moderate fluid shift and keep vision a crisp 20/20 in perpetual zero grav. Kimmy did have one, a very precious, recent upgrade hidden in her tattoos. The Hyperthread. Decepticons The Hyperthread. Depictions of circuitry VR code, her favorite Emos characters, and the planet Earth drawn as a motherboard decorated her arm and shoulder in a swirl of Chinese dragons. Kimmy thumbed the bump without looking. Dropping visuals of illicit tech on your onboard was a preemie mistake. Kimmy felt the hyperthread turn on. Her vision split into two worlds, and on the right, two options came up: Preset and Create New. Kimmy picked Preset, and then out of the submenu of activities, she selected Go Home. With the hyperthreader, she could essentially split her brain into two brains. One would do whatever mundane task she set it to. She could zone out in the meantime. She pulled up her secondary unit and scanned through a menu of enhancements. Oh yeah, Eros Stream. She clicked Select and watched her points click down with glee. Eros was expensive, but she didn't care. There was an ecstasy to the Eros Stream, like fucking so well you knew you were going to come, but you hadn't yet, and it could go on and on. Onboard would be busy filming you, just working away like always. No idea what was going on in the other processor. That was the beauty of hyperthreading. Kimmy could even go back and watch her own worker bee stream later before it got terminally uploaded, just to make sure she didn't miss anything. Her split self got downright saucy sometimes with Artie. Who knew one half of her could be twice as funny? People's filters were always up, but when you went live in the hyperthread, everything took on an extra sparkle. The person dressed as a CGI bunny seemed brighter. The computer-rendered cartoon people, the vintage cartoon 2D graphic people, they looked like you were looking at the screen no matter what angle you stood at. The world just got big in here. Kimmy floated along the hallway, pursuing the ads. Most of them were for things that she couldn't afford, but wanted anyway. Things that she wanted to feel like she could buy. Chocolate, booze, sexy underwear. Who would she put it on for? Her followers? Would any of them watch? An epic fantasy quest game you could play anytime, anywhere. Oh, she better just stay away from that one. She'd gotten in trouble fighting dragons on shift once. Once was enough. The mine couldn't afford to have any one of the quickest and smartest young miners daydreaming. That was how robots got stranded and how you had to go retrieve them and maybe get sucked into one. Apparently it was a real danger of hyperthreading. As long as she was careful, she knew how to turn the thing off, she would be fine. It was lollies who got dinged at work from not being able to turn their hyperthreads off. Kids. I wonder if any of those kids that got sucked into the Tetibus were hyperthreading, or if they were just very high. Kimmy went surfing for someone on her stream to hit up for getting down. She floated into a stream of bodies and filters and virtual streets lined in bright, glittery rooms until she found an upscale place with pink neon and a door lined by pink feather boas. The sign announced, "Parts for Recreation." Kimmy activated a vixen skin, complete with long, soft leather jacket, and stuffed her hands into her pockets. Her field of vision scrolled with emoticon avatars, all of her hyperthreaded followers. Bobble-headed, semi-realistic faces reacted in real time as she shook her luxurious raven curls. Kimmy, on the other side, was a mousy brown-haired with blue Yotoshimo exostensions. Nothing like this body. But here, she was a star. Her followers sprinkled her with hearts and more important, diamonds. That represented points in the hyper-threaded black market. Blue hair extensions were a huge hit. Parts for Rec was a cocktail lounge for the kinesthetic senses. Everywhere you walked in there, something brushed light against your dark sin. Feathers, other patrons, fingers soft across your neck, lips, silk, moving air. It all rushed over you to kick up whatever you were already feeling. Round tables stood among the walls and curtains that could be pulled or not. The Eros was starting to kick in, and Kimmy felt so good she wanted to grab the first fuzzy bunny-eared cutie she saw and hump 'em hard. Boy, girl, it didn't matter. Didn't have to have a dick. No problem. The Eros program could grow you one. Imagination was the only limitation as far as Kimmy could tell. Kimmy felt someone bump up against her ass. She was about to turn and invite them to a table when she saw the man in a long black coat standing in the corner, staring at her. His face was obscured, but she felt two blue pinpricks locked on her feed. Just like that, her Eros high evaporated. No! She started towards the guy. He must be some kind of siphon. She'd heard about them. People who could siphon off your high, piggybacking motherfucker. She was about to call one guy out when he literally disappeared into the curtains beyond. Kimmy bounced across the room as the Eros started to bubble back up inside her brain. She felt her nipples rubbing against the inside of her shirt. She didn't have time for this. She couldn't chase some shadow siphoner, but she couldn't not. She had to. She had to catch him to make him give her back the Eros time that he'd siphoned off her. She had to have it back. Her blue hair extensions weren't that popular among the funders. Kimmy pulled the curtain back and chased the Shadow Man. All right, Megan. This is awesome. I'm loving it. This is hot. So, we're getting a little bit into the metaverse taken into this. All right. Love it. I'll put the links down below, but reach out to Megan. Tell her you saw the story here. And if not, either way, I'll see you next time on First Chapter. Hey, I hope you liked today's First Chapter novel. I'll see you next week. I try to get these out about once a week. Anyway, if you're an author and you think your book would be a great match for this podcast, reach out to me. I'm at Larry Hoy Author, boom, 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 on Facebook. And if you're a reader and you want to check out a great book series, Hit World, the Red Label set. Bullet for Shooter, Demon's Kiss, they're out there on Amazon. You can't miss them. But right now, I am your author, biker, writer, legend, Larry Hoy. Find me on Facebook, Larry Hoy Author, or you've got my YouTube channel. Just ring down there and subscribe. Anyway, I'll see you next week right here on First Chapter Podcast. Bye.